Ladies and gents, Seahawks fans of all ages, welcome back to 12 Talk Podcast. We've been away for a little bit, had busy lives. We've got a new pod for you today, Training Camp Thoughts. We're going to go through the latest bits of news. We're going to talk about the pup, who's still on it, who isn't. It's all been big news. It's constantly shifting. We're going to go through what we want to see at training camp, who needs to show out. We've got questions from the Discord, and then that'll be about it. So, without further ado, let's get into it. And it is, we're back. Do you know what? It feels so good just to hear that music again and see those credits with all the fans playing. It's been a few weeks now, Mitch. I've missed you, mate. How are you?
Yeah, I missed you too. I've missed doing this, but it's nice to come back on with a struggle to fit everything in. I think we're already looking at it like how are we going to get all of this into our usual hour. So excited really to sort of chew the fat with you and sort of get stuck into this, the roster developments and the training camp stuff, and all kind of, so much to go through. I know. Blinking, you'll miss it. We'll be pre-season very soon, won't we? So
yeah, dude. And we'll keep these coming thick and fast. So this is going to be released. So you'll be listening to this and watching this on Friday. And next week's one will be on Friday as well. We'll be pre-recording these mainly because I won't be here to record live, because I will be DJing in a field in Derbyshire for Why Not Festival. So hyped. I cannot wait. It's been so long since I've been behind turntables. But yeah, without more of that and our busy personal lives, let's get into some Seahawks talk, shall we?
Let's do it.
First up, news and roster moves. So we start with the roster moves. Julian Love. We were told today, the day of recording, which is Thursday. It is Thursday, yeah, the 25th. Julian Love has signed a 3-year extension to stay with the team for $36 million. We don't know how much of that is bonus, guaranteed, or what, but it means we've got him, and he is nailed down. Thoughts, Mitch?
Yeah, I'm quite happy with this one because I think his play last year made every 12 across the globe think, well, we don't want to see next year be his last year. We want to see his best years in the NFL be in a Seahawks jersey. But you're never quite sure how the cap situation plays into that thinking. So Mike Mack must have seen enough of him as a leader and from tape from last year to think, okay, well, this guy can be a centerpiece of my defense and a team leader in our locker room for at least, because Mike Mack's here for what, 6 years?
Yep.
Essentially now he's said, that's a guy who I want to be around for the majority of my stay in Seattle. And that's a huge vouch, right? So, and also if it helps our cap situation, in the short term, that's also another positive thing. So yeah, no, I think this is a really nice thing to do on day one of camp. It's a statement of intent. Like, this guy has shown me what I need to see. We're committing to him. It then hands the torch to the rest of the roster, doesn't it? Like, we'll reward you if you show us what we need to see.
And this is it. Like he was a defensive captain in New York. I've been banging the drum for someone like Witherspoon to be a defensive captain. But you know what? If they give it to J Love, I am all for that. I think the guy's a fantastic character. He's obviously a leader in the locker room. People gravitate towards him and love him. Perfect. He's taking that Quandre Diggs role to be that steady safety, with better tackling and some, as of last season anyway, more importance within games, big games. I'm all for this. Whilst we're on the safety talk, let's talk about an ex-Seahawks safety. I know we had a running order that I wrote down, but I thought it just went so well.
Yeah,
Jamal
it makes sense.
Adams has come out in a Tennessee Titans press conference, and fair play to him. He said he held no ill will towards the Seahawks. He just didn't want to change position.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I feel like he's been a linebacker for most of his career. Do you know what I mean? Like,
just
he
got the
just doesn't
label.
want the label. Yeah, he just doesn't want the label on it.
I don't get why though. It's weird. Like, obviously, he wants to be able to go, I'm the best in the nation again when they call him a safety, but those days are far behind him. Like, he's gone to Tennessee because he thinks he's fit now and he can make an impact there. I mean, like I said, I hold no ill will towards Jamal Adams. I was really frustrated with his injury history, and when he came, he was so impactful. He's just been it's unfortunately been a drain on finances, drain on the cap having him there because he's just been injury after injury after injury. But yeah, I thought it was really interesting him saying he just didn't want to move. So I want to know what Tennessee are going to do with him.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see whether they line him up as a linebacker. Just because I don't see at this stage of in his career. I can't see at this stage in his career anyone sort of changing what he is. I just he's flawed. He's flawed a little bit in coverage. He's an excellent blitzer. He's a solid tackler, and he gets sideline to sideline really quickly and makes splashy plays. Like, you're not going to stop him doing that. Most teams' scheme would see that role and the position he tends to find himself in as a linebacker role. So he's just going to be a linebacker in everything but what
What label?
title. Yeah, and it's not like it's affecting his money. Like, before, I used to think that he wanted to be this defensive weapon, strong safety, so he, for monetary purposes, so he couldn't be sort of pigeonholed into a certain bracket of money. But now I'm not really sure, like, where his mind is with that, because he's going to end up doing the role that we wanted him to do, just not under that name. It's mad. Hard to explain.
I mean, like I said, I wish him well. I hope he does really well in Tennessee. If obviously he ends up injuring anyone by accident at the joint practices, then he will become a pariah in Seattle. But yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because I thought it was quite interesting. Another bit of roster news. We brought in Connor Williams for a visit. So Connor Williams has played centre and was it right guard? You said, Mitch. I thought it was left.
Yeah,
But
right.
you corrected me as usual. It's right.
Yeah, well,
Story of my
I know
life,
he's
this
had
on the pod.
multiple. Well, he's had multiple seasons playing right guard. I don't know whether it was left guard covering for someone at one of his previous franchises, or whether it was in college that he played left guard. But I know the majority of his time with the Dolphins was at centre, where he excelled, and I know he's also played a fair amount of right guard as well. So yeah,
Interesting, because we had a conversation off air, didn't we, about what it could mean for Olu, but you've got a very good thought process on this, which hopefully for us Olu fans will help us rest a little easier.
so we have had a question from Bryce from the Hawk Zone Rundown, who's also in our Discord. So if anyone wants to come and join our Discord, there's lots of content creating 12s in there and other 12s from around the globe. Come and join in our conversations. Chuck us some questions for the pod if you want to. So Bryce's question was, can you guys discuss the Connor Williams potential signing, because not a signing yet, and what does it actually mean in the long term for Olu? So for anyone who hasn't heard this news, long-term centre and guard Connor Williams from the Dolphins has been for a visit with the Seahawks and actually taken his medical and passed it at the facility. So he's clearly got interest in us, and we've got interested in him. He's met all the staff because he's done that process. Connor Williams is a top 5 pass protecting grade interior lineman, right? And he has been for a long time. Our roster lacks blue chip talent. And when I say blue chip, I mean guys who grade in the top 5 or the top 1% in the league at their position at a key thing. We don't have an edge rusher that does that. We don't have a D lineman that does that. We don't have any wide receiver that does that. You have to look to our special teams unit to start finding true blue chip talent. Connor Williams may not be as a whole piece a blue chip talent, but in a lot of areas of his game, he ranks as well as anybody. So the fact that he's versatile and can play multiple positions works well for Olu, because it means Olu can play center with someone of that caliber next to him, whether if he plays at right guard. But Laken Tomlinson, who looks a lock for left guard. So that competition for right guard currently, with Bradford and McClendon Curtis and Christian Haynes, our 3rd round pick, that spices that right up, gives a superb competition and depth at centre, and provides a high caliber sort of role model for Olu. It hurts him in terms of how much potential he had for snaps this year. I think he'll see an awful lot less, maybe a third less, or even 50% less than he would have had. But it's a superb pickup if we can get it. For multiple
I think
spots.
it's for anyone who looks at it like, I think people are going to look at it a bit butthurt anyway, because this is Olu's season to shine. He was the starting centre with only Nick Harris behind him, who again is a centre/guard. We then go to sign Connor Williams, who is a starting caliber centre/guard. But then, regardless of if Olu starts, that means that someone like Harris or Williams could step into right guard, which means that Haynes won't start, and then vice versa. So I can understand where Seahawks fans, like other 12s, are looking at this going, oh, that's a death sentence for X, Y, Z. And it might be for, I think, possibly one of the guard positions. Definitely one of the guard positions, because we've not got enough centers to cut any. But like you said, bringing in someone of that caliber when our O-line has been Swiss cheese for so long is just amazing. So anyone who is wondering what it means, I think it means fantastic competition. So Bryce, fantastic competition. It means someone that Olu can learn off, who's a very high caliber player. It also means that it gives us that backup of fantastic quality. So even if Olu isn't ready this season and needs another season to mature into the role as a starting NFL center, he's there. I mean, you look at the who was it that the Chiefs, not the Eagles, selected to be Kelsey's backup. He's been Kelsey's backup for 2 or 3 years now.
Wasn't
should remember, because he was high on my list. But Kelsey helped pick him because he said he's the type of center that I could teach over a few years and take over for me. It's never a bad thing having a veteran presence, especially a good quality veteran presence. Mitch is looking now, you can tell. His screen's gone all white, and he's like,
killing me.
His massive screen. So Mitch doesn't even have a light in his room. That's just his screen.
Yeah, it's an enormous screen.
So. It is huge. But I think it's a fantastic. If we get him, it's a fantastic acquisition. Like whether it's as a starting player at centre or right guard, or it's a backup behind a young and up and coming interior offensive line. Cam Jurgens. There we go. Yeah. It's like Jurgens for anyone else, but Jurgens for all of our American listeners. For someone who lived in Germany for 5 years, it's definitely Jurgens. But yeah, and I think it's going to be great. It's going to be great for the maturity of the maturation of someone like Olu or Christian Haynes, because everyone's pinned a lot of hope on Christian Haynes. But please remember, he's a rookie who's going to be coming up against veteran defensive linemen who'll be doing stuff he has never seen before. So, a great potential position.
I think Anthony Bradford's more of a casualty to that move than it would be for Olu, because that current three-way fight for right guard, McClendon Curtis and Christian Haynes and himself, Bradford, that's that's two good fits for what
Group
we
offense.
perceive to be a new offensive scheme
Mhm.
line wise. Bradford doesn't really fit that mold. I think if Bradford stays on the roster, he's used in certain looks or certain sort of downs or run heavy packages and I think if you've got a guy like that and you only put him out for those things, you kind of project to your opponent what we're about to do.
It's the Daryl Taylor effect. It's
Yeah,
if
on
Daryl
offense,
Taylor's on, you're like, oh, he's just going to rush the passer. That's all we know because he can't defend the
yeah,
run. If Bradford's on, they're like, well, they're running this ball.
yeah,
It's a one-dimensional player. However, if he
yeah,
goes
and I
to a
think
very run-heavy team, then Bradford could be very successful. I was quite high on him
well, he
coming
was
out of the
fine for
draft.
what we did last year. It was
Yeah.
fine for us last year, honestly. So not anymore,
Anyway,
maybe.
enough about that. So that's going from a guard, but potentially signing. Mitch broke some news to me before we started recording about a guard that we've cut already.
Yeah. Yeah, Tremaine Ankrum didn't make it out the first day, which I know Rams fans are absolutely loving that their reject couldn't cut it for one day, in the Pacific Northwest, which is funny. But I had heard a story from the media that Derek Hall had bull rushed Tremaine Ankrum on day one. And just knocked him flat, but they're not really like sort of full contact. They're not sort of full-blooded contact at this point. And to have wrong-footed a guy so badly, I mean, he is quick,
Out.
but he's wiped him out, and he didn't make it out the first day. And that's also a guy that weighs nearly twice his body weight. It's a 300+ pound guard.
What a shame. And I'm just happy seeing my boy Derek Hall getting some props. Derek Hall, you were very high on him coming out of the draft last year, and I have carried on that hype train where I was annoyed by the lack of production he got. Didn't even get a single sack for last season, which I think is a travesty. I'm hoping this season we will see an absolute meteoric rise in his production because he's just got so many tools that I love.
I think our scheme's going to allow people to feed off the chaos, though. Like the old scheme, you had to be able to consistently beat your man with your skill set, and that doesn't help a rookie because a lot of the time you're going to be facing a 4 or 5 year veteran, and you've got to outsmart him in your first year. I think when you've got chaos ensuing with the way you line up, with the numbers you put on the line, with certain players dropping out that you were sure were going to be rushing the passer, but they're now in coverage. Like those scenarios are going to mean Hall is quick and powerful, and he's got the drop, and other teams are going to have to react to the fact that he is uncovered, and the quarterback's going to be holding the ball for longer, and all these things mean he's got far more of a chance in his second year than he had in our scheme last year. For my money, anyway. I think you play in this scheme, you're going to get a couple of sacks and tackles for a loss, basically out of just the chaos.
And let's see some batted passes from him with his giant mitts as well. That'd be nice.
Yeah,
it puts a hand up and you just see quarterbacks going, "Where's the sun gone?" Perfect.
Shovels.
I mean, yes, huge hands, absolutely huge. I mean, with that is all the news I could read. Oh no, we've got one more bit of news. The top 100 has started to be released, and currently,
like weeks ago now.
Yeah, but currently there are only 3 Seahawks on it. First up at 95, you've got Julian Love, who hasn't appeared in it before. Well earned, as we said earlier. And then next up, you've got Reek Woolen at 91, dropping from 76 the year before. Based on the season he had last year with his dodgy tackling, which is a subject we'll get onto from a Discord question later, I can see why he's dropped, but the fact that he's still in there shows exactly how good he is in coverage. And then third, last but not least so far, DK Metcalf at 84, dropping three places. In fact, I sound like top of the pops. Dropping 3 places from 2003 DK. He's gone to 84, which I think put this a bit of disrespect on DK, but I can kind of understand it, even though he had, was it 1,100 yards last year? But
Yeah,
he should
I
be up there next year, hopefully.
I think he's less. I don't think he's dropped down because of any kind of mistake on his part or inconsistencies or drop off in his performance. I just think there's a few wide receivers that have really flourished in the last couple of years. And I think when you're constructing that top 100, there's a bunch of them now that you're going to need to slot in ahead of him. Players like CD Lamb that aren't necessarily top 5 in the league, but they're possibly,
unless you've got him in fantasy.
Yeah,
awful. Every time I play someone with him.
If you're working your way down from 100 and you're plotting in the wide receivers, the first one goes in maybe third, and then another one goes in the top 10, and then there's 3 in the next 10 picks, and you work your way down, and Metcalf goes in, but I think he's dropped just because there's a few names that have moved ahead.
And people that have come into the league, like Nakua, who came in, had a great season, Chris Olave has just been fantastic. Yeah, I know. I get it.
I think that's the reason more than any drop off from him. I do think that he can be climbing that list based on the scheme that we're about to employ. Based on actually, when I mentioned the scheme, a huge observation by the media from training camp was how often Ken Walker was actually lining up on the perimeter and catching. And I think the emphasis on getting him in space regularly and basically making defenses factor him in is really interesting. I think we'll see Zach Charbonnet in the backfield and Ken Walker out wide quite a lot.
How that's going to be so interesting to see as well. I've seen a lot of stuff of him lining up out wide, and even if it's a matter of he comes in on a flat, it's going to be. I'm based on what Gino said about this offense, having been introduced to things that he's never seen before. I'm so intrigued to see it. Like, even if this season it doesn't all come to fruition, if we can see flashes of what it can be, I'm going to be so excited.
Yeah.
I mean, with that, let's get on to the main topic of this pod. Now, as always, we are proud UK Seahawkers. Mitch and I are both paid up members. You can join the UK Seahawkers for as little as £12 for one person, £20 for a family. You get some cool goodies. You get to go to the annual meetups, which next year is in Glasgow. Sorry if I offended anyone the last time I said it. Not my intention. But yeah, all you've got to do, you can send your payment via PayPal to ukhawksfans12@hotmail.com, and they will post it to you for free. If you're outside the UK, it's £5. Quick example as well of some of the awesome goodies we got this year. It was all throwback based, and it's just cool as anything. And as we've had a German Seahawker as one of our guests, and we'll be getting another one on soon to show us a fantastic squad builder that they've got. The German Seahawkers, you can join them for only €15, which is approximately £12.68 or $16.06. No, €16. Yeah, $16.06. I'm getting myself so confused. I don't know anymore.
You nailed it first time.
Yeah, I know. I second guess myself. But yeah, that gives you access to exactly the same. You get goodies from them. You get discount at the pro shop. You get access to the tailgate zone. It's all there. They're a fantastic bunch as well. Don't be afraid of the fact that it's German Seahawkers. You can translate their website, and the majority of the guys I've spoken to from there, their English is impeccable, much better than my German, which is saying something, as I was there for 5 years of my life. Right, so here we go. Training camp thoughts. Who is still on the pup? What do we want to see? And who needs to show out this training camp? So I've just updated the pup. Currently on pup. I think this is slightly outdated though, isn't it? As of
very recently.
Very recently. So this one says Easton Gibbs, but as Mitch said, Easton Gibbs is now off the pup. Cam
Yes.
Young still on the pup. So big old nose tackle there, but we've got Hankins who's filling in that role. Drake Thomas, that's another linebacker on the pup. Jarek Reed on the pup, and Abe Lucas on the pup. Now, based on what Mike Mack said, we're probably looking at Abe coming back before Jay Reed. Is that right?
Yeah. So Cameron Young's expected back next week. He's almost ready. Abe Lucas, he said, is running full speed, but he is not quite suiting up yet.
Yeah.
Jarek Reed, he said he expects a couple of weeks tops after Cameron Young, but didn't want to be sort of quoted on that. They are loose guides, but just ballpark what they're expecting. They didn't mention Easton Gibbs, but half an hour before we started recording, Easton Gibbs was declared fit. He'd passed a medical, which means apart from Drake Thomas, who's still there in the middle of that list, we've now got Dodson, Baker, Tyrese Knight, Easton Gibbs, a bunch of other undrafted players. We've got Rattigan there as well. Suddenly, that linebacker room looks really competitive. But
it looks full.
Competitive. It looks full. Yeah, it looks full. In terms of competition, there's some dramatic drop off in terms of experience, but that's a talented group. A lot of the bodies that are there from in an undrafted capacity were extremely productive. So they've played a lot of ball. So I like how that room looks now in terms of numbers. I just really hope we don't pick up any injuries there to Dodson and Baker, because I think if we are going to be competitive in games, those boys need to be out there quite a lot. So,
yeah, otherwise you are going to be relying on your Easton Gibbs. You're going to be relying on John Rattigan. You're going to be relying on O'Connell,
Tyrese Knight as a rookie.
Tyrese Knight as well. I mean, it's nice to say that we have near enough a full linebacker room, and we know there's going to be some of those that will go on the practice squad. Someone like Drake Thomas, who we picked up from the Raiders, wasn't it? Very highly regarded, especially coming out of college. Easton Gibbs as well, another highly regarded young recruit. It's going to be exciting to see, especially to see what they do in training camp and who goes well there. Which I think, because I don't think there's any more pup updates yet, is there?
No, not that I've seen.
Leads us perfectly onto what do we want to see. Now, Mitch and I have got 3 points each because we don't want to overload this. I will start first, if that's okay, Mitch.
Yeah, you go.
I want to see some solid and efficient linebacker play. I want our worries as Seahawks fans after losing Bobby and Jordan Brooks to be calmed somewhat by seeing the presence of someone like Baker and Dodson not doing the same roles as the aforementioned linebackers, but showing what they need to do in this scheme to be competitive and to be leaders. And if it's not those that step up, I'd love to see any of this other young group step up and show what they can do within this this new defensive unit.
Nice. I want to see some leadership. We've lost big personalities, none more so than Bobby Wagner. But we've lost some big personalities in this group, and I think we've also picked up some players, players like George Fant. You know, since he's returned, like since he's been gone, he's been around and had a career. You know, he started his career with, he's had a career and come back. That offensive line is young. I want to see that sort of thing from him. Leonard Williams is in a highly paid end of career sort of style contract. We should get the best years out of him performance wise, but when you pay that much to someone at that age, you want to see some leadership, from whether it's leading from the front or whether it's with actually sort of grabbing hold of the young guys and, you know, really sort of coaching them up on the field after a bad snap, or, you know, that kind of thing. When we're down at half time, you want to see them really rally in the locker room. We've got players like that are fairly new. Jay Love's another one, fairly new into the system, but brought in to be that steadying force. I want to see leadership from the new guys. I want to see them prove themselves.
Nice. I like it. My second one is I want to see I want to see some variation in who receives the ball. I want to see throws from Gino or Howell to different receivers running different routes and getting different
Maybe a
quantities of
tight
ball.
end.
Oh,
Maybe a tight end for once.
right. With the amount we're paying Noah Fant
No.
at the moment, I'd hope. I was going to say nearly said George there. It gets very confusing. But yeah, the amount we're paying him, I'd hope he becomes a major part of this this offensive game plan. That's all I want to see. I do not care. I know DK's come out and said it. He's not there for personal accolades. He just wants to win. So he doesn't care if he has multiple 1,000-yard seasons with record-setting touchdowns. He just wants to win games and be in a winning team. I don't care if we end up with equal throws to every receiver, providing those receivers contribute effectively, score touchdowns, get us over the sticks, beyond the stick, anything like that. I don't care. I just want to see that ball being spread around, and I want it to start in training camp, and I want them to show us not too much, but their intention to get all these wide receivers in the game. I want them to show us what they could possibly do with Ken Walker in a quasi receiving role, because if you have Ken Walker back there, who's say LaVisca Chenault doesn't step in at running back, or Zach Charbonnet steps there, there's just so much flexibility. So that's my number 2.
Okay, well, I like that. I like that quite a lot. That probably would have been something I would go to, but instead I'm going to talk about just some sort of personality to our schemes. I think when you look at our defensive scheme last year, you could kind of see what they were trying to do, but it did. Pete Carroll's defenses they didn't have the character they used to have. They'd been adapted and patched up and sticking plasters on everything, and everything was band-aided up to sort of allow it to compete with modern football. What we're supposed to have now, with a trend-setting college offense that was one of the best in the country and the NFL's best defensive mind, what we should really see, and what I really want to see, is that scheme look like it's got its identity. Okay, well, this is what we do now. Like, this is how we rush. This is how we work in coverage. This is how our linebackers are going to play. Because I don't want to say the Legion of Boom more than once in this pod, because chasing that is I've used it. But back when we had that, everyone in the league knew what we did. They couldn't stop it. That's what I want Mike Mack's defense to get to, and I want to see a little bit in camp of, okay, this is who we are now. The guys are buying into it. They believe in it. They're feeling, what Mike Mack and his coaches want to do. This is who we are. That's what I want to see. Just a little bit of personality in our scheme.
I like it. Well, my last one, and we've seen it a bit more, but you talk about Mike Mack and personality. They're two things rolled into one. I want to see more Mike Mack in front of the camera. I want to see more personality from him, because everyone's come out and said he's fantastic as a teacher. He is a great coach. He has got everything he needs to be. Awesome. I'm not saying I want him to be this absolute superstar in front of camera, but I want him to just give us some more. I want him to let us behind the curtain a little bit, show us who he is, and things like that. He comes across a really quiet man. Like, I think in his press conference he said, "Oh, you might see me and my wife biking on a trail." Like, all right, dude, just calm down. Don't get too excited. That's you absolute hedonist. But I just like to see something like that. I'd like a bit more insight into this coaching group. I say Mike Mack, I'm going to say all the coaches. They've all had the little press conferences, but I want to see more of them. I want them to let us into their minds, their personality, especially Ryan Grubb. I love a bit of Grubb, and I think everyone's sort of the same. But Mike Mack, personality, coaching team, I want to see more of that. I want them to get. I want to be able to get to know our coaches and have a bit more of an affinity and affection for them. Because right now it's just a bit of excitement and the unknown.
Yeah, I think anyone succeeding Pete Carroll is always going to look like a bit of a personality vacuum.
Yeah,
like he does look. But unless you express yourself and you use lots of fun slogans and really sort of be animated in front of a camera, you're not gonna look like that following Pete Carroll. And it seems to me he's super studious and well thought out. He's not going to make many gaffes in front of the camera. He's not going to say many things in a passionate rant. You're just not going to get it from him. So I know exactly what you mean. You want to see him just be a bit real and see some emotion and some passion, rather than just being extremely detail orientated and yeah, I get it. I completely know.
I mean, I say this because we're in front of our cameras doing the podcast and by a microphone, so this is what we do, who we are. But I think it might be a little bit shy. He's not used to this sort of attention, which is absolutely fine because first time head coach, he wants to get the team buzzing first before he can start doing that. I just want to see it start coming out more and more. The more he instills and gets that confident as a coach and with the team, I think when the results start coming, he will be, because for the first couple of months it's going to be twitchy bum time where, as we've said, we think the defensive scheme will take a while to bed in. Maybe the offense will as well, but I'd just like to see a bit more of that. Even after a loss, I'd like to see some emotion from him. And I wanted to put some movie quotes as well.
Don't talk to me about movie quotes. I've still got PTSD from scoring so poorly on your quiz. I think for my last point, I want to see a bit more from our year 2 rookies, from the previous draft class, because I think there was an extremely high ceiling, and still is, for that class. Players like Olu and Derek Hall and Cam Young and
JSN.
Mike Morris, JSN.
Mike Morris.
Yeah,
I should have put him in there.
Mike Morris, Jarek Reed. There's a huge amount of untapped year 2 potential there, and I think we drafted really well this year. If we get a good rookie year from our rookies this year, and we get a real kick on from some of our year 2s, that is an incredible amount of lifeblood pumped into a really talented, bunch of veterans as well, with a really good bunch of coaches. So I think that could be something I'm looking out for a lot. I mean, every time I'm looking at footage, I'm like, "Where's Mike Morris? Where's my guy?" Like, I'm already looking for him.
That might lead us, because that was your 3rd. I've done 3.
Yeah.
Leave that. On to our next point. Who needs to show out?
Oh yeah, perfect.
Mitch, would you like to start this with the man you've just mentioned? You might as well.
Well, if we're doing this question on the roster, I think it's Trey Brown. I think Trey Brown, contract year. We've just loaded up the cornerback room. I think is a brilliant scheme fit for what we're about to be trying to do. Super physical, flies around the place, puts his body on the line, really physical. That's a superb fit for Trey Brown in a contract year. If he fits this scheme as well as I think he could cement himself another 4 years on the roster. Failure to do so, or a recurrence of his prior injury problems, and I think we could be looking at him on another roster next year. So I think he's the ultimate answer to that question for me. I think he's the one on the roster that is the most make or break this year. In terms of the guys I was just talking about, I don't think anyone in a year two in the NFL is particularly on the precipice of, falling out of the NFL. You've got a bit of leeway there. But from that draft class, I think Mike Morris has
Anthony
got the
Bradford.
most. Yeah, well, we've already spoken
Ah.
about that. That's a crowded room. Mike Morris is another good fit for our system. I think he could do a bit of what Jadeveon Clowney was doing in Baltimore. But I do think
That's another
there's a
crowded
huge
room
amount.
now.
It's a crowded, it is a crowded room. And I think Draymond Jones is going to be the guy they move around in certain situations the most. And I think that's also the same situations that Mike Morris might have otherwise been put into. So when he gets his opportunities, he really needs to do the business, I think, this year.
I think the Mike Morris, and obviously you were high on him. He's the second Michigan guy that you've managed to call out in a draft as a Seahawks player. Well, he was the first. The second one was Barner this year. When I say I think he needs to show out, he was coached by Coach Mike back in Michigan. So Coach Mike helped mold him into what he became, this absolute monster on the edge. Playing at 3 tech, 5 tech, wherever they wanted to put him. But I think in this system, in this very crowded room, his snaps are going to be limited. And he needs to show out. It starts in training camp. If he can show out in training camp and show what he can do, knowing how Mike Matt likes to run a defense, he might outshine someone like Draymond or whatever. Because even though Draymond's done all this training, who's to say that he's going to actually be a fit within this defense? So Mike Morris, I think, needs to show out, and I'd love to see him show out. I'd love to see him show what he can do, and then there's no other option but to have him start ahead of certain players, in certain situations, because this is going to be a scheme based all about situational football anyway. And Coach Mike's already come out and said it all depends on who we play week to week, and what they're doing. That's what is just going to morph every single time. My player, I think, needs to show out this training camp. I've been mulling this over. I think I'm going to say it's Dotson from the linebackers, because Jerome Baker has got a proven body of work. He's a top-class blitzer. He's a green dot wearer. He is a leader on the field as well. The Dolphins fans, when they found out he'd gone, were raging because of what he brought to that team. So I think he's nailed on. I think Dotson had a fantastic season last season when he came in for the injured Milano, but he's not a certified starter, even though by PFF grades he was top linebacker in coverage or whatever it was. I've not revisited that for a while because he's been injured and not been able to talk about him. But I think he's going to have to show out. He's going to have to show that he deserves to be one of those linebackers, a middle linebacker in this scheme, because as we've said before earlier in the pod, that is a pretty big room now with some young talent.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an obvious. I don't want to say it's an obvious choice. You picked a good player there to discuss, but I think there's a few 1-year contracts floating around, private style stuff. I think if players like Dodson don't make the squad, I think a high draft pick's being used to address those positions next year. So it's great for us if those players can really fit into the system and make a position their own, and make us have to really think about who we're renewing and who we're not next year. That's a great situation to be in. But yeah, we've got multiple 1-year contracts that are in similar spots to that. So if I was to think of maybe one more, I'm going to say Jaron. Well, Jaron Reed, I think, needs to have a good camp. I think he needs to have a good camp because we've got a number of players that can play the nose. If you go, okay, well, we don't need to play nose, lose a few kilos, and we'll have you just play as a rotational defensive tackle. Well, that room's pretty packed as well. And then, you know, he obviously played defensive end as well at times. That's packed. So he needs to have clarity on what he's being expected to do this year, equip himself correctly weight wise, which is probably already happening or has already happened. I actually haven't looked at what he's come into camp weighing. It will give us some good clues. But he's a veteran on that line, which is a rejuvenated position for us. I think he needs to have. I think he needs to have a good camp. To be honest,
I like that. That's a good shout. I love Jaron Reed. I think he was phenomenal last year for us. But again, it's a stacked room. We've got a veteran in Williams. You know, we've got some fantastic young players. You know, Byron Murphy's come in, and it looks like he's going to be playing nose in certain packages. And then we've got Hankins, who's the true nose tackle as a run stuffing like nose tackle. Jaron Reed, where are you going to go? I like that. One more each. I've got two that I really want to say, but we'll have one more.
Sure.
I could go with the obvious.
Well, say both, and the other one could be an honourable mention, right? Just
okay.
Well, not an honourable mention, but just
right, so
throw both out there.
First one, Mike Jack needs to show out.
Okay.
I think we mentioned Trey Brown. I think Mike Jack's in sort of the same boat. We restructured his contract, so it was minimal, but that's minimal. If we cut him, we don't lose a lot. And we've got a good secondary now with some interchangeable pieces there. And we heard Coach Mike talking about Lance Boykin making plays. So we've got plenty of cover out there. My second one is someone that has been one of the most infuriating players I've watched over the last few seasons. It's an edge rusher. Can you guess who it is, Mitch?
I reckon it's Darrell Taylor, isn't it?
It is Darrell Taylor. Yeah, it is Darrell Taylor. Darrell Taylor needs to show out something chronic this camp, because it is a loaded room. He cannot live on his college reputation any longer. He cannot be that one-dimensional edge rusher, because that's not what is needed in this scheme. He needs to be able to play on the edge. He needs to show he can stop the run. He needs to show that he can come back in coverage, which is the two things that I've just mentioned there have been two of his biggest issues. As we said earlier, if he's on the field, you know, any offensive line is going to go, the rushing from Taylor's side. Cool.
Yeah.
Like, he needs to show.
There's a couple of. Yeah, I completely see where you're coming from. If he makes the roster, and I don't think for any stretch that it's a locked on thing. I think that there's a good chance he doesn't. But if he does make this roster, like I mentioned earlier about Hall and feasting off the chaos, his bend on the edge and his closing and generally, you know, his sacking of quarterbacks is generally pretty solid. Like you don't see him whiff on too many. I know he's had a few high profile gaffes over the last few years, a few sort of blooper reel moments, but
the Jared Goff one.
Yeah, I didn't want to kind of say it, but yeah, it was pretty embarrassing. It was bad. Yeah. It was as bad as it gets, honestly. So I think he could be another 10 sack season if he stays on the roster, based off the fact that in this system we stop the run by committee at the line. We really jam up the lines with the amount of players there. Rely less on the middle linebackers to, you know, stuff the run at the second level, really stop it at source. So whilst he might still be on the edge or the end of that line, the stopping at the run will be done by the group rather than the individuals. There's not going to be 3 or 4 people there stopping a run. It's going to be 6 or 7 bodies on the line. So his weakness is covered. His strength is played to in the system. I genuinely can see him having one of his better Seahawks years this year, which is really annoying because we'll probably end up having him sort of carried on to the next year's roster if that's the case. But then I don't mind that. I don't mind that if it's working.
Yeah, but if it works, if he stays on the roster though. But he's only got to beat out Chenna, Boye, Draymond Jones, Derek Hall, And as we said before, Mike Morris, who's slimmed right down, he looks like he's in good shape,
Yeah,
and
racing
then you're
speed.
going to have, and then you're going to have Daryl Taylor, who's going to be sort of trying to knock on that back door, just being pushed out every time. So let's see. Did you have a last one, Mitch, before we move on to our last couple of segments?
No, Daryl Taylor was my last one actually, but we've both kind of
God.
had our piece, so that's worked really well.
There you go.
Yeah.
The last segment that we've really got is it involves you guys, because Mitch has already asked one, which was from Bryce from the
Right.
Hawk Zone Rundown. I had the amazing opportunity to talk to him and Ryan on the Hawk Zone Rundown, and we've shared it on here as well, with Mitch as well, and it was fantastic. But we've always had a good time with those guys, haven't we? But yeah, so go check that out on the channel. But this is a section that we're introducing called Questions from the Discord. If you're a Discord member, you can ask us questions every time we're going to do a pod. We'll always put a little alert up there. If you're not a Discord member, why not? And also, if you haven't subscribed, why not? Like, share, hit the notification bell on YouTube, Spotify, Amazon, all those good things. Anyway, back to questions from the Discord. Mitch, we've had because I put the question out there. Who has anything to ask? Really late today, so I do apologise. It's been a busy day. So we've had one, and now we've got another one, which is very close to my heart. Please, Mitch, go.
Oh, you want to do that one first? Okay. So we've got one from Gary talking about how irregularly you see NFL franchises practicing their tackling, and just how bad some franchises are at tackling fundamentals. So he's put, I've heard that the last few seasons, no one was seen practicing tackling at all in camps. Has this changed under the new regime? Also, Leslie Fraser said that they were looking at having Woolen travel around as a cornerback for coverage matchup purposes, and possibly following around best receivers.
I like it.
So that's really interesting to me. I think when it's predictable where Woolen is going to line up, you have a little bit of an issue with people preferring to run the ball that direction, or putting the ball in the hands of a tight end and forcing Woolen into a bit of a physical mismatch, although less of a physical mismatch this year because he's put on some real timber.
Yeah.
So personally, I've not heard anything about addressing the tackling in camp and things, but we are only on day 2. So let's not.
The tackling thing is something, as I said, is very close to my heart. And if you've listened to this pod for any amount of time, you'll know that, or Mitch and I on other pods, you'll know it is something I will talk about forever and ever. Now, obviously, with the NFL being so cautious about player safety, they limit the contacts that you can do, same as sort of rugby and other contact sports in the UK and around the world. They limit the amount of contact you can do. And I think within that, in previous regimes with the Seahawks especially, they didn't see tackling as a priority within those set time frames that you can do contact drills in, which, Gary, I'm with you. I think it's something that needs to be impressed upon teams and impressed upon players, because even though it's, in inverted commas, taught in the college ranks, it's not something that seems to be carried on throughout professionalism. And when you come up against college players, young men, tackling will be easier, same as playing any youth sport. But when you come into the big leagues, as we've just said, people like Mike Morris have slimmed down but have added a hell of a lot of muscle. Reek Woolen has spent the all off season adding a hell of a lot of muscle. You try to tackle DK Metcalf with a bad technique, you are going to get seriously injured. That list grows and grows and grows. So it's something that I think needs to be addressed. And from what I know, the Seahawks are actually putting a bit of an emphasis on tackling during camp, which is fantastic, because tackling isn't something that they need to do in pads and a helmet. Tackling something, the fundamentals is something that can do without extreme contact or without any real body-to-body contact. They can use bags, they can use whatever. So I'll be all over that, and I'll be keeping my ear to the ground. So Gary, as soon as I know and I have any pictures or videos to show, I will be sharing them on the Discord. Don't you worry, sir.
Any excuse to get into that subject matter.
Any excuse to talk about tackling. Yeah. I love a good tackle, mate.
The other one we had wasn't necessarily a question, but we'll move it on. So Ben, UK 12th man, had said that it was very hush hush about the knee injury for Abe Lucas, and his worry that there was nerve damage. Pete Carroll had previously described it as chronic, which wasn't a great sign at the time.
Mhm.
So that comment, I mean, that's not necessarily a question. It was something that was thrown into discussion on our Discord, which is a common occurrence that we are chewing the fat about the current affairs with our team. I just addressed that one from Ben because I think since Pete Carroll's description of it as chronic, he did later retract that. I don't know whether it was a second opinion from another doctor or the way that it had progressed, that it seemed to have had more of a chance of being closer to a full recovery rather than something that needed constant management. And I think after saying that, the kind of approach to his rehabilitation seemed to change as well. It seemed like it was he's nearly ready to come back, and when he does, we'll just have to manage that. And it made it sound like he's never going to be a 17 game a season player again because he'll be half a season, protect him, keep him for the playoff, for the playoffs, and managing that situation basically. But actually now he's gone through operations and full recovery and rehab, no clear plan to rush him back for camp. I think they're actually planning for more of a full recovery than it ever sounded like when we initially heard the sort of diagnosis.
And he is shifting some tin as well.
Yeah,
like,
he is.
Without any knee braces, like seeing some of those squats he was doing, I was like, holy cow. Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that one, Ben, yeah, I think the first one was maybe a misdiagnosis, or Pete Carroll might have misspoken when he said it was chronic, because
I
we
think
all
there
know
was a
that
bit of that as well.
chronic degenerative, like arthritis in the knees, that type of thing. I don't think that might be the case. If arthritis in the knees has started this early, so I've got a long way to it's debilitative. So yeah, just quickly to go back to Gary's point about Reek Woolen following the
Oh yeah, we didn't really
the
address
wide
that. Yeah.
receivers. So that was what Leslie Frazier said on one of his interviews, which I think is a fantastic idea because it will then stop him from having to have those 10-yard run-ups tackling, as I mentioned before, which has not been emphasized greatly. It will just allow him to track a ball and a player, which I think is his strong suit. And it also will take out some of these quicker wide receivers from the game. And if you know you're as a role player, you know that wide receiver you don't have to factor into your zone or your man coverage because Reek's got him. It allows you to cover any other space, which I think would be interesting to see.
Well,
Really
off the back of
see.
that, yeah, off the back of that, I think it's intriguing because what we've seen from Mike Mack's defense is show one thing, ball gets snapped, do something else.
Mhm.
Factoring that in, which is reacting to what your opponent's doing, that's not a Mike Mack thing at all. Like pre-snap saying to a guy, everyone else is going to show this and then do that. Reek, you've got a free pass to just pick up that person.
Mhm.
You could, if you picked up on that being a thing in a game, you could probably use that against the system because you could look, if you worked out what the packages were most times, and then you look at Reek and go, okay, well he can't do the thing that he's supposed to do in that look if we put that wide receiver in motion, Jalen Waddle, because we're going to be playing, Jalen Waddle or Reek or whoever. Actually, it would be Tariq Hill. They put Tariq Hill in motion, move him out of that package, and then I just don't know how that works. But I can see it having high potential if they could master it. I think that's fascinating to me.
Can we also talk about Tariq Hill very quickly as well? Just from a trash talking point of view, if you are man to man with him and you're at the line waiting for the ball to be snapped, the first bit of trash talk I would do to him is go, Reek, congratulations on the birth of your new baby. What are the rest of them called? Because he will be thinking about that for at least a minute after the ball's been snapped. He's got about
Yeah.
28 of them now, hasn't he? I
There's a
think
lot of
someone deep fake the coach, sort of saying, "Oh, I think they call him the cheater for more than one reason." Or to be honest, if that was Mike
incredible.
McDaniel, I wouldn't surprise if people said it. With that was our, unless there were more, Mitch. Was that our
No, I
questions for the
think
Discord?
we've touched on it all, and we'll be coming with another pod next week. So, got to
Perfect.
save something for next week.
That we have. I mean, that is basically it from us. The last thing, obviously, if you have anything you want to say about what you want to see from training camp, who you want to see show out, let us know in the comments. Just pop it down there. Mitch and I will happily answer either from the pod or from our personal YouTube accounts, and we'll happily engage in conversation. Also, join the Discord. We put it in there already. Like, that is where all the main conversation happens. There'll be me, there'll be Mitch, there'll be Seahawks fans from all over the world. We've got Germany, the UK, we've got Canada, the US, and then we're just going to keep growing and growing and growing. I've basically got a bingo card now of the countries that I want, marking them off slowly. If you want to appear on the pod as well, by all means, let us know. Hit us up in the comments below, or you can email us. That's all in the description down there. Again, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Follow us on X, on Instagram. We've got a Facebook group as well. All these links are down here. They are on every single one of our videos. Check out our last videos as well. As I said, we've had some fantastic guests. We had Clinton Bonner on previously. We had the pod with Bryce from the Hawk Zone Rundown, which was a very cool pod. We've got more guests coming up. Apart from that, Mitch, before I witter on anymore, is there anything you would like to add for R12s?
No, I'm done. It's a pleasure to be back. Thank you for everyone for tuning in, and really looking forward to going through the pre-season with you all listening.
Yes, we will be back with another pod next Friday. Before that, if you've got any questions, as I said, down here or in the Discord, hit us up. We're more than happy to talk to you. But I think for Mitch, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Peace.